Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful Sunday. This time with a quote from James Clear, where he says, "The first minute of action is worth more than a year of perfect planning." The first minute of action is worth more than a year of perfect planning. What is your stance on that one? Please share it with us today, Peyton.
Yeah, super important concept, and this is a bit of an exaggerated corrective for a bias that many of us have naturally that we should likely look to recalibrate within ourselves if we want to reach our potential in the world. And that is the bias to analyze, and to use more planning, more thought, more deliberation, more talking to ourselves as a means of procrastinating real exposure to the world, real action, real vulnerability, where we throw our ideas out there in the daylight and actually see how they do in the ways that they do well, in the ways that they fail. It is a means of succumbing to our fears without admitting to ourselves that we are actually inhibiting ourselves from realizing our purpose or moving toward it with real action. It is a means of avoiding the discomfort of leaning into what we actually need to do, the real work that is required for us to accomplish the plans that we are refining in a box rather than putting in the real world. As it relates to our personal life, we can totally see how this happens in many things. How many of us have spent months intending to take up a hobby and not doing it? I can say that sometimes that's years for me on certain things. But where I see this perhaps more counterproductive than anywhere is when this is done in business. And the book that first pointed me to the importance of shipping stuff in the real world and letting daylight give you the feedback rather than just trying to run simulations in your head with limited judgment and information is the book The Lean Startup. And this is one that's very commonly cited, commonly used out in the startup realm of Silicon Valley and tech startups, but is just as applicable on smaller scales to even projects within business, even investments that we make. And what it points to is this mindset, this methodology, which you obviously are very familiar with as a Scrum Master of an agile way of working. Of rather than let's spend 3 years locked in a room, just really thinking hard about this and making changes based off of not real world information, but based off of more talking to ourselves. Let's get something that's a minimum viable product, ship it out in the world, see if it will actually sell, and then iterate based off of real world feedback in how it actually does in reality, in real life. The tendency that many of us have, especially due to a fear of failure or fear of looking dumb, especially if our egos have gotten in the way and we've started to tell ourselves a story about how we're good at this or that or how we will succeed at this or that. And so now we're attached to not failing, even on a small scale. We can get in our own way. We can do what I would say, the wrong approach of putting the cart before the horse, of basically talking to ourselves, wasting a lot of time and potentially even a lot of resources before we actually get this thing into daylight. When in reality, we will achieve far greater results. And the whole startup universe has shown us that you get far greater results by shipping in MVP, seeing how it goes, iterating, prioritizing the most important things, getting it back out, refreshing in the real world, and not taking the temptation of, oh, I have the greatest idea, I just need to perfect everything about it. Oh, I can't sell a product until I have my business cards and I need my stationery and there's this issue on this page of the website and I need to think about what I'm going to do when sales grow and I can't even meet the demand yet. I need more scalable systems for this product that I haven't even sold yet, and I need to make sure that the logo is perfect, and oh, do I need to get a branding consultant? And oh, where are we going to have do we need a bigger office space? And all these things that are not actually involved in selling the product. We tend to want to do all of this stuff as sort of a mental exercise before we're actually doing the thing of shipping the business, shipping the product, selling the product, and building the business from a more lean and iterative process. In the real world, we get better results from receiving feedback and integrating feedback from the real world. As long as we keep our idea sheltered from reality, sheltered from having to get results, we are preventing it from improving in the most direct ways toward getting the best results. And this also, of course, applies to our efforts in self improvement. If I try to spend 2 months figuring out what is the best way to work out rather than actually going to the gym for those 2 months, then I'm going to get much worse results. If I spend 2 months thinking about the best way to meditate rather than actually sitting down for 10 minutes a day, I'm not going to make the same amount of progress. You are much better off with an imperfect approach that's actually being done, because that will show us better ways to do things. And that is actually our best way to figuring out how to have a better plan. And this bias that many of us have to avoid the discomfort of actually acting is very, very inhibitive to our ability to manifest things in the world. And so this is something that is uh, definitely worth taking a look at our own lives and where this bias is the strongest within our own lives. Because even if we've outgrown it in some areas, we probably haven't outgrown it in other areas. What do you think about action versus planning and the way that we should try to find the right balance and discernment about this?
Well, you put in some beautiful examples from the business sides. In okay, let some daylight shine on your product that you ship. Is a really great way to say maximize the art of maximizing the stuff you don't do, features you don't develop for customers they wouldn't buy. Just give um, ship the thing and then gain the information back, because action produces information in a complex world. Action produces information, so you gain feedback, you gain information about the state of the thing and about ways to improve and about the market which is interested in the product and in which features it is interested. So this is, you mentioned the methodology, agile versus planned. You see, sometimes you have like kitchen devices with so many features you cannot think about all the ways you can use them. You also have no idea about where the manual is, and so you don't use it. You just use the on button on the microwave and the off button or whatever, and the timer, whatever. So if on the other hand, you see then microwaves with like multiple and thousands of features and sounds and so on, where you would have wanted a microwave which just can put the timer on and the amount of power you wanna have. This is a better solution, in my opinion, because it's just like you give it out and it works and people use it the way you want, but maybe a slight and tiny amount of people want to use it in a different way, and therefore you wasted all these resources you invested into the multiples of feature sets. You wasted it because the customer bought not because of the features but because of the one feature which moved the needle the most. So action is a way to produce information which helps you to maximize the work you are not doing, which is to be more effective with the energy you have, with the resources you have. So it is to reduce the waste. And planning is nice. Plan as often as possible, but after the action has been taken, because there is new information to be replanned with. And if you plan like 3 years straight in a complex world, you will fail, because in military they say the plan never survives the first contact with the enemy. And therefore, just plan for different scenarios and have plans ready so that you can fall back seamlessly. But never think that the map is the territory. Never think that your plan will work out without interruption. Have a direction, have a clear thing you want to achieve, and be stubborn on the vision, as they say, and flexible on the details. So the plan in a complex world constantly needs rearranging, needs reconsideration, and the plan only gets more valuable if you act upon the plan. So it is complementary, but only action is more valuable than only planning. But planning with action is even more valuable. And iterate upon that, and you produce like a system which is very fit for a complex world. And yeah, what do you think about that idea of maybe that it reduces waste if we take action and gain the feedback information? Or what do you think about the maximization of the work you don't do?
Yeah, you point to something that's so causal in this whole equation regarding the complex world. There are inevitably going to be so many things that we do not consider in our plans if we are just trying to simulate all of reality in our mind, especially if we're, for example, in our 20s and haven't seen the world play out for decades and decades. If we don't have that much experience, or for example, let's say we're in a world where technology is constantly changing the landscape and the ways that you have to market to customers, the way that you have to sell, the products that you can make. All of these things are dynamic and completely shift every single decade or faster. You really do have to gain real time feedback if you actually want a decent plan. Your plan sucks if it doesn't incorporate real world data, real world tactics, real world methods, real world prioritization on the actual gaps in the plan. For example, if you have a great product, if you have a great way to make the product, if you have a great way to sell the product, but you don't have any way to generate leads to sell the product, then all of it is worthless. It means nothing if you can do all that, but you can't generate leads to sell the product. Or if you have a way to generate leads, you have a way to sell, and you have a product, but you haven't thought of your business cards yet, your logo isn't perfect, your website is still in a placeholder spot, you can still generate cash, get real world feedback, and people will tell you that, oh man, I'm nervous about going with you because you don't have good Google reviews yet, or I'm nervous about going with you because of this and that. Then, out of the 10,000 possible things that you might have considered in a year of talking to yourself, you've just been pointed out the three that are actually impactful in your mission. And so, this art of not doing all of the things that are not priorities enables you to actually be effective and move and act on the things that are priorities. It's really important to not do stuff if you want to actually be able to prioritize results on the things that are impactful. And it is the reality that some things are 100 times more impactful than other things. And so our allocation of our energy and our actions is super important. And the real world is where we should be looking for that guidance on what we should be focusing on. An example where people, I think, common, or at least in my experience, are tempted to plan, intend, tends to be especially with new ventures, especially with their first venture. And I've seen this with people that I love dearly and respect a lot as it relates to real estate investing, for example, where in the United States, you have a huge competitive advantage by being an individual mom and pop real estate investor that gets a few rentals because you get subsidized debt, because you get good tax write-offs, because you can very likely get approved for this thing. It tends to go well for people, especially if you do just the basic stuff. And a lot of people will intend to do this for decades, but not actually do it, even though it works, even though they very much could succeed at it. And what I see a lot of times is a scarcity mindset at the root of this that causes people to be inhibited from taking the first step in action. And I don't blame them. It's something that's very conditioned into them from an early age. It's something that their parents have conditioned into them most of the time. It's something that society has conditioned into them most of the time. They fear loss. They have an intense risk aversion. And the mindset of scarcity mindset is that I will be harmed by taking a loss. I will be harmed by losing this thing that is in my hand because There's only so much of this thing. And so if I lose it, it is subtracted from me and I cannot get it back. And I will feel intense regret. And that regret will be very painful for me. This is what inhibits many people from getting in the arena. Where the reality is that if they were to go buy a single family rental and it didn't go well, they might lose some money, but along the way, they would meet a real estate agent. They would learn how to make a lease. They would learn the importance of leasing to the right people. They would learn something about repairs and construction and what costs a lot and what doesn't. They would learn about registration. They would make a new LLC and understand how that works for the first time. They would get a lender, maybe a property manager. Maybe they would network with a few other real estate investors that would then point them to other deals that are better opportunities. They would then learn about what was good about this first investment that they made. Oh, it was this neighborhood, it was the size of the deal, it was this financial shape of the deal. They would learn what was bad about it. Oh, I should have looked at the foundation and the capex and the roof, and that it was this sort of a house and not this sort of a house. They would learn all of these things that, in more than anything, they're fully in the arena once they take that first action. And that alone is the most valuable part of it, even worth paying a tuition for it. However, the fear of paying any tuition oftentimes prevents people from taking any action. And this is something that if you wait 10 years to take action, that costs you 100 times more than taking a loss on your first action, especially if you do a reasonable amount of prudence on just not putting too much at stake with the first thing that you do. Getting in the arena, starting this whole thing in motion is worth a lot more than preventing making mistakes. Preventing making mistakes will constantly keep us held back, will keep us small, will keep us inhibited, and will keep us limited in the possibilities in our life. Making mistakes, even if we have to pay a tuition for them, is a really good investment most of the time, especially if we are intentional about the risks that we take. And so this bias for action, this bias for movement, obviously it applies to starting businesses too, although most of those actually do fail, unlike some other investments. But this bias for action in getting into the arena is such a high value creator for us if we can accept that we can't plan through anything. We can't plan through everything. We can't control everything. We will absolutely take losses if we are putting skin in the game and getting in the arena. But we can pick games that we actually can reliably win, that we've seen a lot of people win over a very long period of time, and the rewards are really rewards that we want in the end. Those games exist. And if we prevent ourselves from starting those games, we're never going to win the games. And so this whole bias for action thing is obviously he's exaggerating. Like there's a bit of an extreme, like 1 minute versus a year, blah blah blah. But the truth is, if we plan for a year and don't take that first minute of action, the whole year is wasted. And if we plan for 5 years, so we have a great business idea for 5 years, but we never actually make a product and try to sell it, then it is literally just entertainment at best and self delusion at worst. And so this is something that's really important for us to pay attention to. And like almost everything else, I can be really good at this in one area and really bad at it in another area. And so this is something that can be integrated further and further, even if we've recognized this in one area of our life, even if we've recognized it in business, maybe we haven't recognized it in our investment in relationships or community. Even if we have recognized it in those two places, maybe we haven't recognized it in the effects that we can have over our personal health or our mental health. There's a lot of areas where we should really take an audit of, am I just talking to myself? Am I just planning and planning and planning and ruminating and thinking and thinking and thinking just in my head, separated from the real world to no end? Or am I taking action in addition to my thinking about the stuff that I'm doing? What are your closing thoughts about planning versus action and really the opportunity for growth in the world and in our lives?
Yeah, thank you for sharing all these great ideas. And I'm not exempt from okay, great in one area, but suck in the other. But there is a saying which made me think about action and what it actually does, because action transforms something. And there's a saying which goes like that: the action reduces the lion of terror to an ant of equanimity. So you have this fear built up in your head. Okay, what can go wrong if that happens? Okay, maybe my party won't go as planned, and so on and so. But you can plan for everything, but it's a complex world, and things still gonna happen. And therefore, you can also change your life through changing your narrative, like in the podcast before. Um, you have the fear and you tell yourself a story. Oh man, maybe it goes wrong, but then you act despite of your narrative, and that produces real world feedback. And you see, oh, it wasn't so bad. And the other way around, you tell yourself a story that enables and empowers you. Okay, whatever comes, whatever goes, it will still be awesome. And then you act. And then you have the potential for even greater real world feedback, which, just expect that the best is yet to come. And the things will turn out because you project a different energy into the world. Just from you reacting towards the feedback that comes to you, just from you approaching the world with a different kind of energy, which is based on, okay, I'm here, I can do this. Let's see what happens if I bring this value, if I ship the product. Let's see what happens. And don't make the fear-based aversion decisions too often, and shift it more towards like the possibility-based, courageous moves. And then you see that the lion of terror will reduce to an ant of equanimity. The thing you feared so much, you planned for so long, will turn out to be just another moment which will pass, maybe with some difficult feelings, but they will pass as well, and we'll move on. The world will turn around itself for another day, the next day, the next day, and the next day. So don't fear too much, but act more.
Wonderful admonition, my friend. It's a good intention this week. I have an intention to do a bit of an audit of myself in this way. Where am I just planning and not acting? And where I'm acting and not planning, I have a whole other equation to to take a look at. And I think I have room for growth in both directions. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you for sharing these thoughts. And
Appreciate
I'm
you as well.
definitely looking forward to growing in all these areas. Have a great week.
Thank you very much. Have a great week, man. See you. Bye, man.
Bye.